Bloomberg Economics finding a 100% probability of a recession within the next 12 months.
What do you think, John? Global recession?
Yes, we're heading into a global recession.
We're headed toward a recession.
The probability of a recession.
Recession.
The 21st century hasn't been short of unpleasant surprises. Wars, political conflicts, housing bubbles, crises, pandemics, more wars. The entire world is in a storm right now, and the world's most powerful economy is moving to the epicenter of it. The inflation is at an all-time high, stock markets and real estate are unimaginably overvalued, job crisis, geopolitical conflicts, things are not looking great. As the world is heading towards the recession of the century, millions of people start wondering, what if the US economy collapses? How will it take place and what will be the effects on the world? To understand how the collapse could pan out, we first need to look at the month the US economy has almost ended, the September of 2008.
So this is clearly a dramatically lower open for stocks.
It is incredible because we're sitting here watching and waiting and watching and waiting.
The housing bubble was bursting. People were losing their savings, panic on the streets. Investors have withdrawn a record $144 billion from US money market funds, leaving businesses with almost no cash. Luckily, the Fed foresaw that and printed enough money in time to supply the market with cash. If that wouldn't have happened and withdrawals have continued, that would have put an entire economy on halt. But what if the crash happened so fast and unpredictably that Fed would not be able to find an effective solution? Let's imagine such a scenario, compare it with the reality and answer the question, how realistic is the chance of the US economy collapsing? If the economic collapse occurs, it would happen very fast, in 1 or 2 weeks. The worst thing is that such collapses are unpredictable. They are caused by a chain of events, most of which cannot be controlled. The surprise factor and panic, those are two pillars on which the collapse stands. For the sake of the experiment, I'll assume that we have seen many signs that warn us about the possible downfall. Inflation has been on the rise for a couple of years, leading to hyperinflation. The value of the dollar decreases and people's salaries can buy them less and less goods. The government starts facing difficult decisions. Lowering the inflation leads to increasing already high unemployment. The stock market starts falling down, and most people see that as a bad sign. To the stock market to start its rapid decline, you only need a spark, a loud bankruptcy, bad investment, or simply bad news. In this case, people start selling their stock, decreasing its value, causing panic among other investors. Companies lose money as their stocks plummet. So, in a desperate attempt to save themselves, they start firing people. To save the stock markets, the government needs to pass multiple bills aimed at providing aid to businesses and unemployed citizens. If such bills aren't passed, people are starting to lose hope. Foreign partnering countries see that and start asking for their loans back, and since the US has not enough money, it can't pay everyone. It makes it hard to ask for additional loans, which makes it really hard to settle things down. But that's still not the end. People are worried and desperate, they've lost their jobs, their savings aren't enough for basic commodities, and the prices are skyrocketing. That's when the hoardings and looting start. Shops don't have enough food for such demands. If the crash affects local governments and utilities, then water and electricity are no longer available. As people panic, they go into survival and self-defense mode. Oh, that happens everywhere, but on Wall Street things are even worse. The market falls by 20%, and the only solution to stop this process is a complete halt. No money is going in and out, the stock market is hibernating, waiting. Banks are losing money as there are millions of people in lines to withdraw their savings and funds. But again, there is not enough money, so banks start introducing limitations, cementing the common belief that everything is going sideways. Some banks even go bankrupt completely, unable to satisfy the demand. The government is also unable to provide enough cash. Gold reserves are still sealed, so printing money is an only option. But as we all know, more money means lower value, so the inflation skyrockets once again. The government needs more money without printing. The USA's borrowing capacity is limited by debt limit, which has to be increased periodically by passing the corresponding bills. If such a bill fails, there will be no option to infuse markets with cash without creating even higher overinflation. So What do we have? Thousands of businesses closed, millions of people unemployed, America's foreign assets are under the risk of seizure, and anger among Americans rises. That's how the US economy might collapse. But will it? I'm sure that some moments in this terrifying scenario are already familiar to you. You've seen them. Let's analyze this scenario and find out whether such a chain of events is possible. Currently, the world is experiencing the 40-year high inflation, which shows no tendencies of stopping anytime soon. The relentless spike in inflation has caused a steep drop in consumers' confidence in the economy. To tackle that, the government has passed the $739 billion Inflation Reduction Act in the Senate that lowers the healthcare costs and increases taxes for large corporations.
Our bill reduces inflation, lowers costs, creates millions of good-paying jobs, and is the boldest climate package in U.S. history.
At the same time, the administration has announced that in July, they've added 528,000 new jobs, returning the job market to pre-pandemic levels. But those jobs did not help in any way, because today less Americans are engaged in work than before the pandemic. Despite the huge number of jobs available, many industries are still suffering after the pandemic, so people are not hurrying to start working again for small salaries. At the same time, Fed is raising interest rates and aims to continue doing so. The pandemic is really a perfect example that shows how fragile the economy is, how close it is to collapsing. We've all seen the panic among people during the pandemic. Looting, stealing, empty shelves. Everyone has experienced that. That's how it happens. People lose hope, start panicking, making wrong decisions. It's not an exaggeration. The pandemic was a simulation of the world's collapse. And the US is still suffering from it. The inflation we're experiencing now is a result of the pandemic. It fell slightly in the beginning of the pandemic, but then rebounded and rose quickly in the United States as well as in many other countries. Since the pandemic began, the nation's central bank has aggressively printed trillions of dollars to keep the US economy afloat. Doing so has ballooned the Federal Reserve's balance sheet to nearly $9 trillion in 2020. The order for fiscal year 2021, which ended in September 2021, resulted in $325 billion being printed. Washington said, for the ongoing 2022 fiscal year, the Fed has issued a print order ranging from $310 to $356 billion. The money will keep on coming, further fueling the inflation even further. So, will the collapse happen anytime soon? Well, difficult to say. As already said, an economic collapse is always spontaneous and it's always fast. Currently, the USA is experiencing troublesome times, which is shown by simultaneous economic recovery in some areas and collapse in others. After two massive declines, the US GDP has risen by 2.6% in the third quarter, but tech giants are collapsing on the Wall Street, losing over $1 trillion in value since October 26. The complete picture is still fuzzy, so we won't make loud doomsday-like predictions. Maybe the entire economy is not going to collapse, but the recession is almost certain. And you should prepare for it. We'll be making videos about it, so subscribe so you don't miss them and know how to invest your money during a recession. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, hit that like button and let us know your opinions and thoughts about the chance of economic collapse and how are you preparing for it. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.